I'm Dr. Hignell. I have a PhD in psychology, and I'm a marriage and family therapist. And I've been working with post-traumatic stress disorder for probably about 30 years, complex PTSD. And so that's kind of how I got into EMDR, because it's a very effective protocol for PTSD. One of the best known results for PTSD is with EMDR. EMDR is a process that uses the natural process of the brain. And what the brain does, the brain is all about adapting, because it's all about the survival of the being. And to survive, we need to take what happens during the day, and during rapid eye movement sleep, the brain takes all the events of what happened during the day and processes it and stores it, and then it goes to the hippocampus and develops a memory map, and then it takes that memory map of what has happened and adapts it in the adaptive part of the brain. So that when it's kind of like the concept of, you go to bed and you have a problem, you wake up the next day and you go, oh, that's how I can solve it. That's the concept, and that's how it works. What happens with trauma is that the brain tries to do that process, and it's not able to. It's too much for the brain, and it's not able to process it and develop the map and adapt it. So because it doesn't adapt, the person wakes up with a bad dream or a nightmare, one of the symptoms of PTSD. And that traumatizes them, re-traumatizes them, and they go through then these experiences of PTSD symptoms because they've now been re-traumatized. And every time that something triggers them during the day, the information comes in through the senses, any smell, sight, sound, taste, touch, any of that happens, like with the campfire, the sound of a fire engine, the smell of smoke, anything like that will trigger the things that have been in the brain already, but they're not stored yet or adapted, and it's like they go, I show this to clients, it's like they get hit. And people think it's a panic attack many times, and they go to hospitals for it, but it's not a panic attack. It's a and they don't know where it's coming from, because they don't know that smell causes it to happen more than anything. So they might smell smoke, and all of a sudden, they're re-traumatized over the campfire. And if they don't get the brain to adapt it, they will re-traumatize over and over and over their whole life. And so what we do is we imitate REM sleep. And how we do that with EMDR is bilateral stimulation of the brain, because bilateral stimulation of the brain is the eye movement going back and forth during REM sleep that causes the brain to adapt. And once the brain has adapted, the people will no longer be re-traumatized and no longer have that effect. So what we do, they come in and they tell us about the trauma or whatever, and I'm now going to talk about the recent event protocol, because EMDR can treat any trauma, childhood trauma, rapes, anything, molest, abuse, but it takes time. We have a protocol in EMDR that within 4 or 5 sessions will get rid of the current trauma from a recent event. It has to be an event in the past 6 months, because it takes about 3 to 6 months for the brain to develop PTSD. So if we can get the people to do this within the first 3 months or 6 months, this is going to help their brain adapt it and not ever then go into being re-traumatized for the rest of their life. So what we do is we have them tell us the story, and we do bilateral stimulation. We are now initiating in the brain this natural process. And they tell us the story, and we can either have their eyes go back and forth, or we can tap on their legs, or we have tappers they can hold in their hands, or they can listen to headphones, music back and forth. Any bilateral stimulation of the brain will do this. And what that then does is it lights up the brain, and it causes all of the aspects of memory that from the campfire, for example, it lights up all those aspects of memory, pulls them together. It goes from the brain stem, lights up, to the hippocampus, through the limbic part of the brain, which is the emotional part of the brain, up through the cortex, which is the thinking part of the brain, back down, back to the hippocampus, and back down to the brain. And when this happens, it initiates the parasympathetic nervous system, so while they're telling us, they're calmer than they would be telling it in another time. So what happens when this process happens, it lights up all those aspects of memory that are in there. It then goes up and down the brain, brings them to the hippocampus. The hippocampus then develops a memory map of that event, which is what's supposed to happen. And then once it's developed the memory map, the brain adapts it. And so within 4 or 5 sessions, typically, and studies have shown, for a recent event, it will clear up that trauma and keep them from developing PTSD. And it's very effective. We are using it right now here in Chico. We have developed a trauma recovery network, which is a group of about 80 to 90 therapists right now from Sacramento to Chico to Redding that come here and give 4 to 5 free sessions. It's all volunteer, and we are not trying to get people into our practices because our concept is if they want to continue on with EMDR, we refer them to somebody else. We're specifically for the campfire and volunteering to do that and give them these free sessions. We've given out brochures, probably about 1,500 brochures before. We've gone around and told everybody about it. So if they get a brochure, whatever, they can tell about it to other people, word of mouth. But we also have a website. And then on the website, they can say they need help and they write out a message. Then I get one of the therapists to contact them and see them in this area, or if they've moved to Sacramento, Redding, or any place like that for a while, we can see them there. The Humanitarian Assistance Program is who we do this under the auspice of. And they've been around for about 25 years. They started out because EMDR was developed a little over 30 years ago, and the founder of EMDR, Francine Shapiro, who developed the concept, said we need to go around the world, and they developed this nonprofit organization, Humanitarian Assistance Program. And they started going around the world where people did not know about EMDR, to Africa, the Middle East, tsunamis, hurricanes, natural disasters, and they would go there around the world and teach the people there how to do EMDR and then do therapy, these 4 to 5 sessions, with the victims of whatever happened. So for example, on their website, there's a picture of children playing in the ocean after they had gotten these therapy sessions with the Indonesia tsunami. And it was only, 3, 4, 5 sessions that they received, and they were able to play in the ocean again. So the Humanitarian Assistance Program went around the world doing this, and then EMDR started getting spread around the world, and therapists started learning how to do it. And so now we have an international association in Asia, in Europe, in South America and Mexico, Canada, all around the world. And now that's happened, they said to HAP, we don't need you anymore because we now have EMDR therapists in our area to do this stuff. And HAP still goes and does it some when they need it. So HAP said, okay, now what do we want to do? So they started in the United States saying, okay, if we have natural disasters and traumas here, then, and as we know now, it's gone into gun shootings and all kinds of things, fires here in Northern California and Southern California. So what they said is, let's develop trauma recovery networks. And that's where they oversee it, and EMDR therapists in each area develop a trauma recovery network. And that's where the therapists then join and volunteer to give these free sessions whenever there's a trauma in their area. And so we have responded to, through the auspices of HAP, Sandy Hook, 911. It started with the Oklahoma bombing, Las Vegas, the shootings in Florida, Hurricane Katrina. TRNs have responded to all those, but it's the TRN therapists in the local area that do it. People can also contact me by phone if they want. But for example, I want to tell you what some of the symptoms of PTSD are, because I don't think people realize they have PTSD when they do, or that they're getting it. So they're going to get that effect typically when it's been initiated in the brain. And that's what it is. And I want them to understand that's what it is. It's the trauma. It's a trauma brain. And I think we don't have that diagnosis now, but they're trying to get that diagnosis for the next DSM for psychology, because the trauma brain causes a lot of the things that people have is trauma brains and this process that happens in the brain. And so it causes sleep disturbance, mood swings, anxiety, anger outbursts, depression, flashback of the crisis, they'll all of a sudden think they're there, disturbing dreams, lack of energy, lack of concentration, irritability, family conflict, fearfulness, difficulty focusing, confusion, easily distracted, overuse of medication, physiological signs of stress, impaired ability to work, feeling of being spaced out, increased use of alcohol and drugs, other addictive behaviors, feeling of nothing is the same. That's how people feel a lot. Intrusive memories of the trauma, avoidance of reminders of the event. Those are all the symptoms of this suffering. And people will relate to a lot of that. And instead of trying to say, I'm tough enough or I can handle this or whatever, if they can just realize that if they come to us in 4 or 5 sessions, we can clear that up and they can get released from this campfire, because right now where they're at is they're in shock, they're numb, they feel like they're slugging through mud, they can't think clearly, they're confused, they're disoriented, it's hard to work, it's impacting their life. It isn't just getting away from the fire, because their brain has been pummeled. And their brain is still being pummeled because it's having to develop neural pathways to develop new neural pathways for all the new things they're having to learn right now. So they're stressed. And we can help them. I treated somebody with the campfire and she said, I feel lighter. I can make decisions now. And that's what we notice. Even after 1 session, they're able to start making decisions and starting to get through life. And it's just phenomenal. And we can help them. And we can help you.